Ozioma lost her parents when she was just 13 and was taken in by her aunt Mrs. Ada. But instead of love, what she met was cruelty. She became a servant in her own relative's home. While Mrs. Ada's children ran around the compound playing, Ozioma was bent over with a broom in her hand. She scrubbed the floors, washed all their clothes, washed the dishes stacked high in the basin, and carried heavy buckets of water from the well. Every sound of joy from the children outside was a reminder that her own childhood was being swallowed up by endless chores. Sometimes she paused at the window, watching them chase one another, their clothes dusty, but their faces bright with freedom. A faint sigh would escape her lips, but she always turned back to the work before her. She knew what would happen if she dared to pause. Her aunt's harsh voice, her aunt's sharp hand, the stink of punishment that left her body aching and her spirit bruised. Her aunt showed her no kindness. To her, Ozioma was nothing more than a burden. Her days were filled with pain and misery. One evening, Mrs. Ada sent Ozioma to the market to buy some foodstuff. Ozioma hurried through the crowded stores, buying rice, beans, palm oil, and vegetables. She counted carefully, hoping she had done everything right. By the time she returned home, she was tired but relieved. That night, Mrs. Ada went through the basket. She claimed the traders had cheated Ozioma and that the balance was not enough. Ozioma tried to explain, but her aunt would not listen. She sent her out of the house and told her not to enter until she returned with the balance. The sky was already dark, and the streets were no longer safe, especially for teenage girls. But she had no choice. Barefoot and trembling, she turned back toward the market. Her stomach growled painfully. She had eaten barely enough the whole day, just left over after everyone else had finished. Now, with hunger burning inside her, she wandered endlessly along the dark road. Then, a dark shadow appeared and dragged her into the bushes. She cried, screamed, fought, but no one heard her. No one came to her rescue. That night, Ozioma's innocence was stolen. Weeks later, her aunt discovered she was pregnant, but she offered no comfort, no pity. Instead, she was thrown out, disgraced and abandoned, left to wander the streets with no one to turn to. With nowhere to go, Ozioma carried her pregnancy alone. She survived on the little she earned by running errands for market women, and on the mercy of strangers who sometimes gave her food or little money. And yet, in her suffering, she clung to the hope that her child would live a better life than hers. When the time came, with the help of the market women, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. But joy was mixed with despair. How could she feed this baby? How would they cope? After days of tears and sleepless nights, Ozioma made the most painful decision of her life. In the middle of the night, she wrapped her daughter in an old blanket, walked to the gate of a wealthy man's mansion, and laid her gently at the gate. On her knees, with tears streaming, she whispered her silent farewell. Then, with trembling hands, she knocked and disappeared into the shadows. Though she walked away, her heart remained tied to her child. Mr. and Mrs. Okeze were a wealthy couple who had been married for many years but had no child. They visited hospitals, prayed in churches, and even tried local herbs, yet nothing worked. Their home was full of riches, but it was empty without the sound of a child's laughter. It was their gateman that heard the cry of a baby outside the gate. When he rushed to check, he found a baby wrapped in clothes, left all alone. He quickly alerted Mr. and Mrs. Okezie. The couple came out, and seeing the baby, their hearts leaped with joy. They believed God had finally answered their prayers. They carried the child into their home, named her Gift, and loved her like their very own. Ozioma could not stay away from the mansion. Every day she walked past it at a very slow pace, her eyes searching, her heart longing for just a glimpse of her baby. She didn't even know if the child was still there or taken somewhere else. But hope kept pulling her back. Then one day her heart leaped. At the gate she saw an inscription, "Housemaid needed. Apply in person." Joy filled her soul. She could hardly contain her happiness. For the first time in a long while, light returned to her soul. She was sure this was her chance, and she believed with all her heart that she would get the job. Luck was on her side. She was accepted as the new maid in the mansion. That was how Ozioma, the mother who left her baby at the gate, returned into her daughter's life. Not as a mother, but as a servant. Months later, Mrs. Okezie conceived. Instead of making them love Gifts less, it made them love her even more. They called her the key that opened Mrs. Okezie's womb, a blessing who had unlocked joy in their home. 9 months later, Mrs. Okezie gave birth to twin boys. Ozioma threw herself into her work in the Okezie household. She cared for Gifts and the twin boys with so much love and tenderness that Mrs. Okezie couldn't help but notice. And that made her treat Ozioma with so much kindness. Each time she held Gift in her arms, her heart swelled. She could not call herself a mother, yet she was thankful just to be near her daughter, to watch her grow, to hear her laugh. Every night as she tucked the children into bed, Ozioma whispered silent prayers of gratitude. She was happy she had made the painful choice to leave her daughter at the mansion gates, for it had given her child a life of comfort and love she could never have provided. She was also deeply grateful to the Okezie family. Their kindness, fairness, and the way they loved Gifts as their own gladdened Ozioma's heart. She served them with loyalty, not just as her employers, but as people who had unknowingly given her the greatest gift, being close to her daughter's life. As the years passed, Gifts grew up surrounded by wealth and comfort. Every desire of hers was met, every whim fulfilled. She became pampered and proud. She often looked down on people, speaking rudely and insulting anyone who crossed her path. The one who suffered her sharp tongue the most was Ozioma the maid. Though Ozioma loved her deeply and took good care of her, Gift would mock her, speak harshly, and treat her with disdain. Each time Ozioma tried to correct her, Gift would burst into loud wails that echoed through the mansion. Her cries always brought Mrs. Okezie rushing in. Instead of scolding Gift, she would turn to Ozioma with gentle caution, reminding her that Gift was just a child who didn't know better. Ozioma would lower her eyes and step back, her heart aching. There was nothing she could do but endure. She never revealed the truth, never defended herself. Instead, she carried her pain in silence, whispering prayers each night that Gift would one day change and grow into a humble and kind person. Gift's pride only grew worse as she got older. She never spared Ozioma, not even in front of visitors or friends. She would laugh at her loudly, and her friends would join in, throwing cruel words around, calling her clumsy maid or poverty-stricken maid. They would boast that they would never end up like her, and Gift enjoyed every moment of it. Life became unbearable for Ozioma. Gift would purposely spill water on the floors Ozioma had just cleaned, so she would mop them again. She would stain her own clothes with ink and then insult Ozioma if she couldn't wash the stains away. Even at meal times, she made unreasonable demands, rejecting what was cooked and insisting on something else. The day Ozioma accidentally burnt Gift's dress while ironing, Gift was furious. In her anger, she went to Ozioma's room and poured water all over her bed, leaving her with nothing dry to sleep on. Still, Ozioma endured it quietly, hoping and praying that she would change. Another time, while Gift was sitting with her friends chatting and laughing, Ozioma mistakenly spilled juice on her dress. Gift stood up in anger, called her clumsy, and deliberately poured the whole cup of juice on Ozioma's body. Her friends burst into laughter as Ozioma stood there drenched, her heart breaking in silence. Then came the day Faith could no longer hide the secret. Gift, who always seemed so full of energy, suddenly collapsed. Panic filled the mansion. She was rushed to the hospital, where the doctors quickly attended to her. After a series of tests, the results left everyone worried. Gift had acute malaria, but that was not all. The sickness had drained her, and she was found to have a severe shortage of blood. She needed an urgent blood transfusion. The doctors explained that her blood type was rare. Neither Mr. nor Mrs. Okezie could donate, and their faces grew pale with fear. Gift lay weak on the hospital bed, her once proud spirit broken by sickness. For the first time, she looked small and helpless. Ozioma, who had stayed quietly in the corner, stepped forward. Though her hands shook, she offered to be tested. The doctor agreed, and within minutes the results came back. To everyone's surprise, her blood was a perfect match for Gift. All eyes turned to Ozioma, the maid whom Gift had insulted, mocked and humiliated countless times, was the one whose blood could save her life. The doctor was very clear. Such compatibility was almost impossible, unless there was a direct biological connection. The truth Ozioma had buried for years could no longer stay hidden. She broke down in tears and confessed everything. The tragic night that led to her pregnancy, the cruel rejection by her aunts, the painful decision to leave her baby at the gates, and the silent years of raising her own child as a servant in her foster parents' home. The revelation shook the entire household. For Gift, it was like thunder crashing into her life. The woman she had despised, mocked, and humiliated was her real mother. Memories flooded back. The countless times the maid stayed by her side. The quiet sacrifices. The unseen love. For the first time, she saw her not as a servant, but as a mother who had borne pain in silence. Gift wept bitterly, overwhelmed with regret. She clung to her mother, Ozioma, who held her tenderly, as though she were still the baby she once laid at the gates. From that moment, Gift changed. The pride melted away, replaced by respect, humility, and love. She no longer hid her real mother, nor was she ashamed. Ozioma did not demand her back. She was simply grateful that the truth had come to light. For her, it was enough that her daughter finally knew who she was. And for Ozioma, who had endured rejection, shame, and years of silent sacrifice, her greatest reward finally came in the sweetest words she longed to hear: Mother. Sometimes, letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It can be the greatest act of love and sacrifice, giving someone a chance at a better place. And we should also know that nothing stays hidden forever. Truth may be buried for years, but in time, it will always come to light.